Welcome to dentReviews. Today I want to do a review of the Moondrop SSR. Now this is a budget-friendly earphone. This is around $40–50, I believe. Thanks again to MRS over at Super Review. This is a pair that he loaned me from his personal collection. It's a $50, I believe, like I said, a budget earphone, but really, the cable alone is probably worth $50. It's a nice cable here. So this is an easy way to get a decent cable and kind of a decent earphone here. I don't have all the set that it came with, but I'm pretty sure it's just a basic set with the ear tips and everything. You could check that out on their website or Shenzhen's website. Build quality seems very good. They're heavy for their size, I guess. They're made of metal, but they're still pretty light. They're small. The design is simple. They're comfortable. They're not big or bulky. They fit the ear really well. It has the Moondrop 2-pin style cable here. But I like this one a lot because unlike the other cables that I've seen on the S8 and the Dusk and those, this is a single strand cable. It's braided, but it's inside of an enclosed cable, so you can have just kind of a single strand. I like that. I'm not a big fan of the braided style. It looks nice. It can be fancy, maybe even softer, but I like this kind of cable more. It's got the right angle connector, nice translucent plastic. So I like the look of it a lot. It's a very nice cable that I honestly do believe would probably be worth just the $50. Most cables out there that you buy for earphones like this are going to cost you $50 or more, and this is going to get you a $50 earphone cable and an earphone. So it's pretty good value just for that alone. Nonetheless, those are kind of the accessories. These are some tips that I've put on here myself. These are Mayelec biflange tips, Me Electronics, whatever. So, build quality is pretty good. Let me get a close-up here. I just want to show you kind of what it looks like. So this is kind of the style here. So that's kind of the way they look. Pretty basic, pretty simple. You can get these in different colors, I believe, which is nice. And one thing I like about this cable I didn't mention too is it has this little red piece. I'm assuming that's stuck because I don't know how you get it on there, but that's a right piece because it's red and you can feel it. I love when you can just feel something and know which ear it is. At night, in the dark, whatever, it's easy to get them on. So I really like that. So that's kind of the overview of the earphone. Nothing special, just kind of a basic budget earphone. It's got the same Moondrop thing I don't really care for, but whatever. So how do they sound though? Well, these are interesting. They're a budget earphone and they sound kind of like a budget earphone, but they have a lot going for them. What I mean by that is just the overall frequency response to these is what I would consider lean and bright. They're very linear from top to bottom in terms of smoothness, but there's a huge treble shelf. And what I mean by that is from the low bass, let's say from 20 hertz up to like 2 kilohertz, it's relatively, maybe just a slight curve, but it's relatively neutral bass and mids. At 2 kilohertz, it kind of starts rising up to about 6 or 7 decibels, and then it's shelved, meaning it just kind of stays at that level up to the top treble. And then there's maybe a dip at 10 kilohertz like most earphones. But basically, what you're getting is a very linear response from start to finish, from bottom to top, with that whole treble section kind of picked up and shelved up. Now, because it's such a smooth response, there's really nothing objectionable about that. There's no peaks or dips that are irritating or annoying, but it does make it a lean sounding earphone and more of a bright sounding earphone. Now, because it's smooth, it's very resolving. There's a lot of details, a lot of definition, a lot of clarity, and it's not very offensive. So if you want something that's just a really like a detail monster, these are actually very good. They're very clean. I don't hear any noticeable distortion or flaws in the audio. Very dead silent background. It's just that response I told about. So other than that, there's really not much to speak about in terms of the response or the quality. They're very linear and smooth with just that big treble shelf. So if you look at an earphone like the Illumination, which is their high-end fancy driver earphone, it's actually pretty similar response with just that shelf is gone. So I don't know if that's just all the acoustic treatment they have to do costs that much. I don't know. But a couple things I want to talk about. So it has a treble shelf. Well, there's two ways you can remediate that, and they work incredibly well. The first and most accurate way is just with EQ. I was able to use a single point of parametric EQ at around 6 kilohertz, I believe, with a wide Q value, and I just lowered that 5-6 decibels, and that brings that whole treble shelf into a much more linear response. Is it perfect? No, but with a single point of EQ, these things went from maybe 50% accurate to 80 to 85% accurate. I mean, huge difference. And then if you want to, MRS and I were going through and tweaking the EQ, and we had, I think, maybe a 6 or 7 point EQ, maybe 8 point. I don't know, I get crazy sometimes. But when I get that parametric EQ really fine, I was actually able to get this to sound incredibly neutral, very, very high quality. I do believe that as you start to tweak that treble response too much, you do start to feel a little bit of the driver limitation. You know, the bass never sounds as good as some other dynamics I've heard, like the JVC FDX01, and the treble never sounds as perfectly smooth and revealing as something like that as well. But for the difference between stock and EQ, I mean, it's phenomenal. I highly recommend these. I'll actually try to post an EQ for them. I highly recommend these if you don't mind using EQ. Even that 1 point lowering the treble makes these way, way, way better than anything at their price range. Now the second method, which is a physical modification, is on these there's a vent port here, the driver vent, and if you cover that with tape or with an earphone that you can stretch over that second bend there, that doesn't fix the treble, but it actually increases the bass significantly. So again, it doesn't improve like the accuracy overall, but what it does is it brings the bass level more in line with the treble. So as a whole, it's a little bit more balanced and more like a V-shaped earphone than it is a linear with a huge treble shelf. For my liking, I think I prefer the EQ method, but if you don't mind a more V-shaped response for the price of these being $40, $50, I mean, that really is a very small mod to get a very nice V-shaped sound. Very revealing, very smooth, no obvious flaws in the sound. I highly recommend it. For the price, I'd say this is a definite win. Going into it understanding that it's a lean and bright sound. If you don't mind that, you may not need any modification. If you want to go into it expecting neutrality, you're not going to get it. Go somewhere else. They're not warm, they're not bassy, they're not neutral really in any way other than the response is kind of smooth. But with those slight mods, these headphones really go from sounding good to sounding great, and they require practically no effort. So I highly recommend these with the mods, and if you do like a lean sound with a very kind of a light bass and a brighter treble, but that's still relatively smooth, these are a very revealing set. The technicalities of these are pretty good. It has good stereo image, has good depth, it has pretty good quality to it. It's just that treble shelf is really the only weak spot in the response. So go into it knowing that, and I think you got a good set here. At least just for the cable alone, you're not really paying that much. So if you have any questions about these, let me know. I'll be doing some other reviews soon of the Illumination, which is pretty much a similar response, but without that shelf and a much higher price point. So keep tuned for that. Again, thank you guys as always for watching.